David. Thank you, colleagues, for those who made it here. Well, we were there at the request of our Democracy Support and Election Coordination Group, and were authorized by our Conference of Presidents to observe these elections. We were part of the OSCE ODIHR mission, as usual in the OSCE area. They had deployed 16 experts in the capital and 26 long-term observers across the country. On election day, 350 observers from 47 countries were present, including 214 long-term and short-term observers from ODIHR, and there was a 96-member OSCE Parliamentary Assembly delegation. 22 were there from the Council of Europe Parliamentary Assembly, and our own delegation, last not least. Just to observe, I mean, when it's about parliamentary representation, we, as the directly elected parliament, we from the European Union, we come with 96. We come with 7, while the OSCE PA is there with 96 parliamentarians, and the Council of Europe Parliamentary Assembly with 22. So I think in the public perception, we are looking a bit micro style, I have to say. But that is to say something to be discussed elsewhere. Our delegation consisted of myself, Laurent Vince, Isabel Wiesler-Lima, Andreas Schieder, who is here, Cecilia Strada, Nicola Bartuszek, and Alberico Gambino, who is also here, and Isabel is also here, so I don't look at 360 degrees. We were supported by our own secretariat and the EU delegation in Tirana, and I would like to express my gratitude to Ambassador Silvio Gonzato for the excellent cooperation, a prime example of Team Europe working at its best. In the days leading up to the elections, we met with the country's highest authorities, including the President, the Minister for Europe and Foreign Affairs, the Secretary of the Electoral Commission, the General Prosecutor, and the Special Prosecutor Against Corruption. There was a special body established, SPAC. We also met separately the 2 top candidates of the Socialist Party and the Democratic Party, that is Edi Rama and Salih Berisha, and we had a block presentation from the smaller parties' representatives. On election day, our delegation split into 3 teams, observing polling stations in both rural areas and major cities, Tirana, Durrës, Vlorë, and Elbasan, and thereby contributed to the overall assessment outlined in ODIHR's preliminary report. In summary, the key points from our observation are as follows. The elections were technically well run and competitive, but it took place in a deeply polarized political environment with systemic advantages for the incumbent. Key concerns which impacted the level playing field included abuse of public resources, pressure on voters, especially public workers, and the misuse of government events such as the Giro d'Italia cycling race for campaign purposes. There was further tittling the playing field was that the incumbent announced a last-minute pardon for unpaid citizens' fines, a move perceived as vote buying. There was also in April a one-time payment of bonuses to 760,000 pensioners who got €100 each, so say a month before the election. That was also considered something, that impacted. The electoral administration, however, managed the process in an inclusive and transparent manner. The newly agreed cooperation on investigation and prosecution of electoral crimes between the General Prosecutor and the Special Prosecutor on Corruption gave good results. The media coverage of the electoral campaign favored the 2 main parties. No public debate was organized amongst the top candidates, limiting a proper informed choice of voters. The out-of-country voting introduced for the first time for these elections was well managed, but despite the late political adoption of this measure, and there were organizational issues, especially mostly in Greece, due to apparently logistic hiccups by DHL. The EP delegation fully endorsed the ODIHR conclusions. The Albanian legal framework provides an adequate basis for the conduct of democratic elections, yet that there is a need for comprehensive electoral reform through inclusive public consultation and full implementation of still outstanding recommendations. Issues like the lack of a level playing field, the abuse of incumbency, or ownership of media and its impact on the campaign, in particular for smaller political parties, the political leaders' refusal of face-to-face scrutiny, the finance of the electoral campaign, that must be properly addressed. If it is true that the EU accession continues to enjoy full national consensus, it is also true that the incoming parliament should soon pass the needed legislation implementing the previous and additional recommendations on electoral reform that the ODIHR election observation mission will be making. This will send a very positive signal to the EU and across the region. Our own Democracy Support and Election Coordination Group, DEG, is ready to support the Albanian Parliament in all the areas of our remit, for example, the capacity building or the mediation between the parties. We are expecting the final report, I think at the beginning of July, from ODIHR, where there will be additional recommendations. I hope, and that is what we say in all the countries, that there is, with regard to electoral reform, now after an election, and including the recommendations, a broad political consensus. It's not feasible to have a situation where things are unilaterally done by a majority, whichever it is, and the others are not involved or included in this. Moreover, I think what we also heard, I mean, the one thing is what we as short-term observers can observe. What we also heard from long-term observers, one of our groups, they were in Elbasan, they definitely talked about, certain structures that were involved in getting the voters in one direction, and there are, but that goes beyond the mandate of the election observation. There are impacts on the general situation which have an effect on the election, and I think that also will have to be addressed. We have mentioned some issues that are indirectly related in the country report from that we voted today, and I hope and I'm confident that we will be addressing and keeping in touch with all the relevant stakeholders in Albania to give a level playing field, to provide for a level playing field next time, because I think that is what we can expect from any candidate that is expecting to enter the European Union. Thank you. Yes, thank you very much for the exchange of views. If I look at the overall assessment, I mean, there are issues that were mentioned that were not directly election related, but what is also not, so what is indirectly election related is, of course, and we cannot shed a blind eye on that, is of course the fact that in the country itself, and that is relevant for EU accession, there are persistent criminal structures ongoing who are in large extent busy in money laundering and all that. We see the construction that is there and everything, and that they have an interest to keep certain structures as they are, to be able to continue these activities. And I think that is really something relevant for the EU. We cannot allow that if it is about money laundering or drug trafficking, we cannot allow these structures to continue unharmed as EU. As I said, the indirect impact on election is that they have an interest to keep the situation as it is. That I think there is our broad consensus that they find in Albania soon a consensus with the election-related issues, and the other things have to be addressed and clearly be addressed from our side, but also inside the country. Thank you.